Hey everybody, Karaoke here. Today is May 26th, and that marks the very first beta for Guild Wars 2 Heart of Thorns. This one was a closed beta, keeping access only to people lucky enough to get a special drop from the Silver Waste or a magical invite for being signed up to the newsletter. I did not get one of those invites because I declined to participate in the farming, although I'm not necessarily disappointed about that. But I am joined by three of my guild members who did get those beta drops and who got to play in one of the events earlier today. And actually, I think a couple of you maybe got to do too. So by quick way of introduction, I have with me Selara. Say hi quick.
Hi.
She's the girl, so I feel like the voice will be easier to pick out. Also, Kerian,
With the
say
crappy
hi.
mic.
The
Hi.
girl with the crappy mic. Okay, Kerian, say hi again.
Hi again.
Hi again. And also Finalis.
Hey guys.
And Finalis is louder. So I think everybody will be able to tell us all apart. So what I wanted to do is first just get general impressions from you guys about how the beta went, what you think about the Revenant, the events that you got to see, the overall quality and polish of the game. You know, is it something that feels like it's ready, or does it still feel very much like a work in progress and that sort of thing? And we'll go in the same order. So ladies first, Selara, what did you think of the beta?
I thought that, well, it definitely was a beta. It definitely feels like they are getting there, or alternatively, that they only wanted to show us what they felt was ready. It was very clear that there were sections that were not ready, as seen by numerous mobs and objects that were just numbers or question marks. But, I mean, I enjoyed what they had, and I look forward to when either more betas or when they actually bring out the full thing.
Now, you got to play in the previous stress test, right?
Yes.
Did you notice a big change from that stress test? Does it feel like they've made a lot of progress, or maybe does it feel like they just are showing us a little more?
The only progress I really felt was in the masteries, because we got to do a little bit more with it, and it felt tweaked. But for the most part, it just felt like they gave us more to do than actually changing a whole lot.
Okay. Kerian, overall thoughts on the beta? I don't remember. You weren't in the stress test, right?
I was not, no. So this was me kind of going in blind / kind of going in based on what others said.
And overall thoughts?
Overall thoughts, limited amount of content available. The format, I guess we'll talk about a little bit later. But I got to poke at the new stuff being the Zone, new stuff being the Revenant. Got to look at a few of the Revenant traits, which, well, I'd looked at them before, really hadn't paid a ton of attention to because I hadn't really needed to. It was kind of one of those, yeah, this is nice, but didn't pay a ton of attention to it prior to then. It was definitely a beta, which is both good and bad. You don't want it to be done at this point because then you'd kind of be like, well, why isn't it out yet? But it'd be nice if it was closer to completion as well.
Okay. And Finalis?
This is my first time participating in a Guild Wars 2 beta event. I felt the map, the Verdant Brink, is nice and spacious. The verticality of it was really impressive. However, I am a little disappointed with the, events that they've shown us in the beta. Beta's still beta, but as far as from my experience, I just felt that the events were kind of generic of defending a group of NPCs and then escorting. I wasn't very impressed with the Revenant, but, there's still a lot of skills or weapon sets that we haven't uncovered yet. I felt the gliding mastery, that's the only mastery I've unlocked, was, really fun. And the entire area itself, which was, it looks like it was like half of Verdant Brink. I kind of uncovered it in about 30 minutes of just running through everything. But I am definitely excited about the mastery. I just don't know how it's going to impact the game in a longer time frame with it, since that seems like it's the replacement of, just increasing the level cap of the game.
Yeah, so actually I wanted to start with something that you kind of said, and the Revenant, I think, is one of the most interesting topics. When we played it back in the stress test, it definitely had this feel of like, hey, they're only showing us this little teeny tiny bit. We only get 2 legends. We only get 2 weapon sets. We only get 3 trait lines, and they're not even complete trait lines. Now, at that time, we still thought that there were supposed to be 13 traits per tree. Now we know it's only going to be 9, so that could have a little bit of a difference there. But it definitely felt like the class wasn't really complete and being shown to us. Did it feel more complete today, or was it just, just kind of the same stuff? I think that's probably a Selara question.
It felt pretty much the same to me, but, I guess it felt almost, the only way that I can say it felt more complete is the fact that we know that there aren't going to be more traits in those trees, but the fact that we had still missing trees, we had no new weapons, we had no new anything other than that, just was disappointing.
Yeah, and maybe a little bit concerning because it's been 2 months, essentially, since that closed beta. And if you think about the first reveal of the content, it was at the beginning of March. So it's been like 2.5 months, and they're not really showing us any more of the Revenant. Now, that doesn't mean that it's not finished. That could just be standard ArenaNet. We're going to release it on our own time. But I was chatting with somebody on his stream a little bit before you guys started up, and people were asking, like, oh, are they showing, like, guild halls or this and that? And I was kind of like, yeah, that's crazy. Like, ArenaNet doesn't show stuff early, right? They're going to wait for their blogs and official releases and everything. So I wasn't necessarily expecting to get a lot more, but I don't know. I can see where it would seem disappointing. Kerian, Finalis, you guys have thoughts?
Yeah, I guess I'll go first here. I wasn't too disappointed by it. It was almost exactly what I'd expected, partly because we kind of talked it over, Loki, myself, and a couple others, kind of about, what's the content in this beta test going to be? Is it going to be similar to the last? Is it going to be more? Is it going to be a smaller amount of content? What exactly we're going to be looking at? And the consensus was that, well, it would be nice if we got more stuff. It was probably going to be very similar. Partly because we've got new stuff like E3 coming up, where they're going to almost need to show new content. So that's probably being reserved for that. So more of the same. Yeah, was I disappointed by it? I mean, it would have been nice, but not really.
Now, here's a question for you. Do you think they're going to show more than they gave us now at E3? When is E3 even?
Next month, I think, June. So, not too long.
June 16th to 18th.
They're doing their demo in the big PC gaming show. Can't remember who the major sponsors were, but just like the major console vendors had their own little show, except for Nintendo, of course, there's going to be a big PC gaming show, so it'll be interesting to see what's there. And it's going to have to be something new, otherwise they wouldn't sign up for it.
Yeah, maybe. But it could just be trying to take this same content to a wider audience. I want to give Finalis a chance to respond and also kind of answer the follow-up question. Is this enough content to make an impressive demo? If somebody hasn't played Guild Wars, could you toss them in what they're giving us so far and leave as a person and as a gamer kind of impressed with it and wanting to purchase the game?
Okay. I'll answer the first original question first about the Revenant, about how it feels, if it feels completed or not. I feel like the weapons that I've been given, just hammer, and then I think it's mace and axe or something like that. They've already had all the 5 skill sets and the utilities complete. At least it looks complete to me. Granted, some of the cooldowns on the utilities were not being accurately represented, but I don't know. Overall, I felt the Revenant has its place in Guild Wars 2. It just doesn't necessarily fit my kind of play style for the game. So I just guess for me, I wasn't totally impressed with Revenant, but I've seen enough gameplay footage of it to kind of already understand or have a grasp of what I would be experiencing with Revenant. That being said, for the content that it provided in this beta, and like I said, we're only getting a small slice of the, Verdant Brink map for Heart of Thorns, but I kind of feel like this could have been some kind of a major update that they could have implemented into the game, kind of for free, But, I'm sure there's going to be a lot more landmass that they're going to add into this game. I'm just hoping that way back they just said, there was only going to be 3 biomes or anything like that, and Verdant Brink seems to be one of the 3 biomes. I'm hoping that there's going to be a lot more than just what we've seen. But so far, to me, it just feels like it could have been, released as a really big major content update instead of having to be pushed into a full-blown expansion.
Anybody else have a follow-up to that?
Yeah, I guess if it was just this map, dropping the new class and dropping the changes to traits, turning them into mastery lines and whatever. If it was just a new map, yeah, it would be just the size of Silver Waste and Dry Top together, I think. And yeah, that would just be a normal living story content drop, maybe 2 or 3 of them. But the other stuff taken together, I think they're working on building systems, and that's something we'll kind of see paying off in the future. But yeah, it's going to feel like a little bit of a lackluster expansion if more than we're expecting to drop doesn't drop, because it almost feels like they're prepping to go forward with a different model. Maybe less living story, maybe more content expansions. Who knows? But it feels like they're changing things because their future plans change, not necessarily making a really, really great expansion.
Yeah.
I want to comment on the biome thing.
Yeah.
I don't know if you jumped off the edge to go exploring more and, glided down to some of the areas, quote, down below. But it felt like there potentially was areas that we don't have access to right now underneath the current map. That may be that this is one of the maps that's going to have 3 zones that they were talking about with the biomes.
Well, and I want to be careful using zones because, and I could be wrong about this, but my impression of biomes is different from what I hear a lot of people say, right? If you think about a jungle, biome means, sort of like area of life, right? And the forest or jungle does have a canopy with one set of life and a floor with a different set, and then sort of underground with so I think they were modeling it after a real life thing. And when they use biomes, they're just talking about having a layered map with distinct sort of different events and creatures at each level. I got the impression that would be layered in a single map, not sort of this idea that, there's one map that's going to be canopy and there's a separate map that like you zone between and get a loading screen, and then you're on the floor. But I feel like a lot of people have that impression. So am I wrong, or is everybody else wrong?
I had your impression, and that's what I was trying to say, was that it felt like potentially there was another layer in the map. As I flew down, I died, quote, at a much higher point in the map than it felt like was actually the bottom.
Yeah, and
because I kept falling, and it felt like there was still something there.
So, in addition, I totally accidentally jumped off the edge, because when you have movement skills, you inevitably jump off an edge of a map. And I fell into kind of a bottomless pit. I died halfway down, and then it just kind of went dark. So it was one of those, there's probably more down there. There's stuff we can't get to. Go figure, the map is going to be the size of Silver Waste plus Dry Top, maybe. And let's say there are 5 of those zones, and they each have 3 layers. That's pretty huge. So that could be a lot of landmass to explore.
The other reason why that I think that it could be there's more space in this map too is, I don't know if you noticed, there were sections and little caves where if you walked up to it, it looked like it was black. And as you walked closer, it was actually just a really thin black line, effectively, to parse the 2 areas. And it kind of felt like that a little bit whenever you jumped off, that there was just this black layer of sectioning, and potentially that this lower layer just isn't ready.
Yeah, I know I jumped off on the eastern side of Verdant Brink, and when you hit there's like this area where once you go past it, your character instantly gets defeated. But like you guys said, you just kept falling, and I noticed on my end that there were a lot of textures at the very bottom. Like, even though it's black, like, there were like darker black, and then there was like lighter black. So it looked like there were like different trees and stuff at the very bottom when I hit it. So I'm assuming it's just like the missing texture right now. And, that's not technically in the game yet, but they have those things set up as the foundation at the bottom. But yeah, no, there's definitely a lot more to this map. Like, I did a lot of gliding. Once I got the gliding master unlocked, I tried to see how far down I could go before, getting killed again.
So I think there's three options here. One is there's going to be more down below, but they haven't built it yet, so it's not there. The other is there's more down below, but they're hiding it from us for now. And the other is that it just sort of looks like that to create immersion, right? It looks like it keeps going, and then you die, and it still looks like it keeps going, but that's just so you don't sort of reach this weird spot where all of a sudden everything stops. I don't know which of those it is, but I think those are our three options. I get the general feeling, though, that the way that you guys talk about the content, I would call it polished but constrained. So the stuff that they're showing us is basically finished, but they're trying to limit what we can see. Does that meet with kind of what you guys have experienced?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And, so I'm curious as to if this is what they're showing us that's polished, are they limiting us just because they don't want to give everything away, which I think is very possible, or are they limiting us because things aren't very close to complete? And I've had some worries in the past about how far along it seems to be coming. I think when I was first looking at the HOT stuff back when they announced it in January, I was thinking that it might be released in the first half of the year. And we're getting close to the end of the first half of the year, and now I'm going like, oh gosh, is this going to make it, like a Thanksgiving release? So I want to get your impressions on how far along you think it is. I know we're doing a lot of extrapolating here, but curious as to whether you guys think it'll be wrapped up sooner or later.
It depends on how much they're giving us. If it's not, if it's only a couple of maps and the zones aren't huge and whatnot, it could be very soon. But if they really want to give us a large chunk of content, then it's potentially going to be even longer. What they've shown us seems to be relatively polished, but like I said, there was a bunch of stuff that just had numbers. That was, you can't access this. So I don't know if it's not ready or if it wasn't appropriate for the beta. And all of what you said, I agree. In my opinion, it completely depends on how much they're giving us.
Yeah. Anybody else?
I think I'm going to cheat and look at the data mined announcement that Shaman found about the Heart of Thorns being pre-purchasable sometimes in the near future. The last time we had a pre-purchase, it was about 5 or 6 months out. So I think somewhere between the 10th and 12th month of the year is a safe launch point. If it's earlier, I'll be happy. If it's later, I'll be disappointed. But sometime in that range. So fourth quarter of 2015 sounds pretty fair.
Yeah, I think that kind of jives with my expectations. Here's a question. You think the thing they're going to do at E3 is announce the pre-purchase?
That would be interesting. I'm not sure. I think it's a little early, but I don't know of another trade show that is maybe 1 month later that would be a better one to announce at. That could be the thing that they're pushing towards, and if they have a new content drop along with that, maybe another weapon for the Revenant, and maybe the Masteries changes. I don't know. It's probably way too early for those, but something cool. And also, by the way, you can pre-purchase now. That would probably make a relatively decent impact in the show.
I mean, if your sort of assumptions so far are correct, and I think you're on point with these, that it's 5 to 6 months after pre-purchase that the game comes out, and it's going to come out in Q4, then a mid-June announcement of pre-purchase is opening, and open betas starting sometime in July or August, I think would be pretty on point. So I wanted to get your thoughts on some other things that we saw for the first time today. So things that I haven't gotten to play around with yet, because I did get to see a little bit of the map. Obviously, there was more today. But there were some things that were new that I wanted to kind of get a feel for. And the first was the outpost system. The outpost system is supposed to be our replacement for some of the ways that events have been built. We've seen this idea of map-wide metas in Drytop and Silver Wastes, and that's a departure from how the original Guild Wars 2 system was built. And they've tried to find different ways to get players to naturally congregate and do content together. Originally in the game, that was supposed to be hearts, which, I mean, everybody knows my opinion, hopefully, that I think hearts are terrible. And I think that system was kind of a huge failure. I think that they're maybe moving in the right direction, trying to build things off of dynamic events, but I haven't particularly enjoyed the way that they happen in Drytop or Silver Wastes. And one of my main complaints has been that it feels very static and like you're anchored to a spot. That was always the problem I had with hearts. Hearts aren't like, say, quests can be, where you have to venture across the world to do something. You're kind of stuck in one area repeating a task until it's completed. And I've had some concerns that the way they would build the outpost system would just be taking dynamic events but doing the same thing, anchoring you into one small area, repeating the same events over and over. And I got to watch a little of the gameplay, and I'm going to be honest, it did not look interesting to me. And that I don't mean for that to be a slur on your fine gameplay abilities for you guys who are streaming. Like I don't mean to be insulting, but it didn't look fun. So let's start with like general thoughts about the outpost system and whether the events were fun, which is really, to me, the most important thing.
So, if I may interject here before we really get on that conversation, part of the fun is probably going to come from actually having functional armor sets. I mean, Celestial
Okay.
plus Dolyak is probably quite functional for a trade show where people are not going to really know how to play half the time. But yeah, I have a feeling it would seem a lot more fun if you could kill things in a decent amount of time.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely felt weak in the Celestial gear, but like, I guess what I'm thinking more about is not just things die quickly or not die quickly, but are the events built in a way that's different from things that we've seen in the past? So like we know kind of how Guild Wars defend events work and capture events work and escort events work. Do outposts bring us anything other than defend, escort, capture?
Ah, from that point of view, I think they may not, but they may bring us a different variation on them. And this goes to the day-night cycle. So this is my interpretation of it. It may be completely incorrect because I haven't seen a full cycle, but here goes. So the map starts during the day, quote unquote. And you try and take over the zone or maybe not reconquer it, but you try and conquer the zone. And then night falls, and that's when the Mortem are at their strongest, and they start trying to push you back. So it's kind of like how Ore was supposed to be, that promise of you're trying to fight against the undead, push them back to the temples, cleanse the temples, and reclaim the zone. But then, including the temple defense events, but that never quite worked out that way. You never really got pushed back to the front of the zone. You never really went from point A to point B to point C. They tried to funnel people around with events, but it didn't quite work that way. Here, it seems like during the day you're making your advance, and then however far you get, you unlock events at night, similar to Drytop during the sandstorm. However, if you manage to defend those events, you may get to push forward further in the next morning. So rather than change the model, change from defend, attack, escort, gather, pick your type of quest or event, really, they're trying to use them in a slightly different system.
All right, Finalis, Selara, you guys got to have some opinions on that.
I unfortunately agree with you that the events did feel like they were kind of anchoring you in a spot. I potentially got into 2 lower population maps because it felt like we couldn't get through most of the events, and it was rather disappointing. So I don't actually know what happens when you succeed on a lot of events, because, like I said, half to three-fourths of the events that I went to just all failed for one reason or another. And, I mean, yes, they were some of the same events with slightly different flavors on them, so that wasn't particularly exciting, but I don't know how, like, more it's supposed to go and what's supposed to happen, because I didn't get in super populated maps.
Yeah. Well, for the events and stuff, like I feel like either they toned it a little bit too harshly for lower capped maps, or maybe it's just because we're limited to running. Most people are running Revenant on Celestial and Doyak signets or runes, so maybe like we're just not clearing things quick enough to succeed the event. But I've only mainly done the events that were right next to the early zone where you get in. And to me, it just felt really generic. It just felt like it was the same event styles that I've been encountering with in the other like hearts or dynamic events part of the interior world. So that wasn't very exciting to me. I think I was more excited about being able to level up my mastery, and it kind of felt like I had to grind through that type of content to be able to get my mastery set up. But, I mean, again, this was just only playing maybe like an hour in the beta for me.
So when I did this stress test, I felt like I played about an hour, and then I was kind of done. I was like, yeah, I just don't have any more interest. And I sort of forced myself to play more, but I didn't really want to. Did you guys feel that way today at all? Like, oh, I'm going to keep playing because it's available to me, but like I think I've seen the stuff?
To me, a little bit. Again, it had to do with the fact that I felt like I was on lower population maps, so I couldn't experience the other events. But it reminded me a lot of when Drytop first came out, and there were, lots of events, but no one knew what they were doing, and everyone was kind of scrambling around. Events were failing, and then all of a sudden the map would flip to Sandstorm, and in this case Night, and people still had no idea what was going on, and they were just floundering around, and it was just kind of a mess. So I kept going, partially because I wanted to see if, anyone was learning anything and it would get better, or I could find a better map or something. Maybe the Wyvern would come back, because I noticed the Wyvern was not in this, and it was in the previous beta. So I was basically looking for other things, as well as I did want to work on the masteries, because I really wanted to see what was available. And I was a little bit happy I did, because I unlocked both the first tier glider and the bouncing mushrooms, and the mushrooms was a lot of fun.
It's good to
hear. And I'll
leave
it there until we get to the rest of the mastery discussion.
Well, I would actually like to talk about masteries, but I want to give the gentleman a chance to respond.
Exactly.
Yeah. For me, it really did feel kind of grindy to the point where I didn't really want to play this anymore. But since I was running, with a group of some people that I knew, as soon as one of them got the gliding mastery done, and she started to just fly around and explore the map, it kind of got me a little more excited to at least finish getting that mastery and experience it for myself. And I definitely feel like the mastery system can open a lot of cool things that you can do on the map. And I think that's definitely one of the systems that ArenaNet is trying to implement with these newer maps, is that you can definitely have different types of access through different areas once you unlock those masteries. But it's just that you have, as a player, I guess my mindset has to transition and get, accustomed towards this type of new system that they're implementing into the game.
So I guess I sort of have a follow-up question to that, and we can talk about masteries in general as well. But does gating access to areas behind having to unlock things make the game more fun, or does it just feel like a task list of things to do? Now, I know we can't answer this for Heart of Thorns yet because we haven't played enough of it, but I'm curious as to if you guys have any general thoughts about that. I think there's some examples that we might already see in-game, and one of them to me feels like Fractals a little bit. So with Fractals, you can do any level as long as somebody in your party has the level, but like you only get credited for doing up to your personal level. So to some extent, you have to grind a bunch of levels, even if you would be capable of playing at a higher level. So like for me right now, my personal level is only a 30, but I have 75 AR, and Kennen have done Fractal 50s. So I don't get to experience those rewards and drops and everything until I grind through, 20 more times to get there. So that doesn't feel good to me, and I'm worried that Mastery is just give them a new way to say, look, hey, there's this cool thing over here, but you have to go and unlock your 4th tier of gliding Mastery before you can get there, and that won't feel good to me. So, thoughts? Silence. I've stumped everybody.
I think it's because we haven't seen enough with the masteries yet. We don't know if this is going to be the rate at which we're going to get masteries. That's a huge question, right? As far as gating content behind prerequisite quests and events, basically proceeding through a map, yeah, that could feel like a huge grind. I mean, or certainly can feel like one.
Well, but hang on, because it's not proceeding through a map. It's grinding out experience while having a mastery track activated. It's a time sink.
Yes, and I'm not speaking just about that. I'm speaking about just the content in general on the map. Is it good to have a design where in order to go and do event D, you have to do A, B, and C first, every single time?
But and that's a good question. I think, to me, there's a difference between doing relevant events that chain together, like I have to do this, then this, then this, then this, because we are progressing through something, as opposed to, before I can do this, I have to do other stuff, generally, for a little while. That's some of the pain of leveling too, right? Hey, before I get to do this dungeon, I have to level up, and leveling means I just have to go do a bunch of random crap, and then I'm leveled, and then I can do it. And that never feels as satisfying as, hey, if I want to go, on this particular path, if I want to go kill this dragon, I have to fight through all this stuff to get there, right? The activities that I'm doing to acquire and get to the content are relevant to the content, as opposed to just, I need to do other things to get there first.
Sure.
Unfortunately, I think we're looking at it from the wrong side, because yes, well, you do need levels to do a dungeon, but you don't necessarily know what you're missing if you haven't done it before. So for us going on an alt and saying, I have to level up before I can get to this dungeon that I know is fun, everyone else, it's, I'm just going to run around the zones and do these random things, and oh look, I've got levels, and hey, what's this? I've heard about dungeons. I'll go look up what a dungeon is. Oh, I need to run around some more? Okay, I'll run around some more. And I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, but to me, my problem is that as I was running around the zone, there were the jumping mushrooms and the condition mushrooms and whatnot everywhere. And every time I turn around, I'm like, oh, there's a mushroom I can't use. I walk past a mushroom, I don't click anything, I just walk past it, it's, oh, you don't have the mastery for this. Yes, I know that. Stop taunting me. That was my problem. Not the fact that I have to go around and grind before I can get to it. I mean, it's a nice little carrot, and we know there's something there. But they were taunting me the entire time. And that was getting really mushrooms. Annoying. Yes, the taunting mushrooms. When I finally unlocked the bouncy mushrooms, that was all I did for like 10 minutes. Look for these mushrooms to where can I go now? Where can I go now?
Mushroom casts taunt. You are now forced to attack them and slowed for 5 seconds.
So
I
think we're looking at it a little bit differently. I think that once people potentially get the hang of the zone a little bit more, it'll be more interesting, and you'll go, oh, I'm just going to go run around and do these couple things. Oh, look, I gained a level. I don't think it's going to be that bad once people get the hang of it. If I had actually been able to succeed on the number of events that I had been on, I would have gotten more than the 2 mastery levels that I got in the 4 hours I played, because I played in both.
Yeah, I think
so. That's my opinion.
I think that for me, as long as they don't make it character specific for the mastery system, like make it account bound, where once you unlock one, it's unlocked for all the other characters on your account. But they'll have to balance that out. I don't know, but I just feel like if they make it so that it's only character specific, and every time I bring one of my 3 or 4 alts into the new zone, and I have to like re-level that same mastery, I feel like that's kind of grindy. I don't think it's as bad as the traits that they currently have in the game, but I hope that they don't just make it so that you can just pay gold to unlock your masteries again.
So I did look it up here on the wiki, and masteries are account-wide, so at least you won't have to repeat it through characters. And I think that's huge that they're doing that.
Yeah. I mean, it's definitely fun when you're doing it the first time, because that's for me, that's like a sense of progression of my level 80 character. I'll feel like my character is learning, adapting in this jungle. But, after I do it once, or maybe even twice, I definitely don't want to do it, 3, 4, 5, 6 more times on my other characters.
Yeah, I think I'm with you. And the UI they updated as well. And I didn't get to play with it, but it looks much better.
In the current beta that me, Kerian, and Selara were playing it?
Yeah, you didn't do the stress test, so you didn't see the old Mastery UI. But it used to be this panel on the bottom of your screen that you pulled up, and I, for the life of me, couldn't figure out how to use it.
Yeah, it was a little confusing to me as someone that was new to it, because it said that I received a mastery point, and I was trying to figure out, how do I spend this mastery point? And it took me 5 minutes to figure out, I have to enable the track, and then once I level that track up, then I can spend the mastery point.
Yeah, it's a really weird system of, mastery points unlock the ability to level things, but then you have to level them.
Yeah.
But I can handle the slightly confusing system. But we talked about this a little bit in our last podcast. I've been a little worried that there's been more focus from ArenaNet on building systems than there has been on building content. And sometimes it's not even a choice that they make. It's just that the resources they have available are, they can put out this much in the way of programming and coding and building systems, and this much in the way of content because of the number of artists that they have available, etc. But I just get the feeling they're talking a lot about systems and not necessarily about content. And if that's not intentional, I think they might have that balance wrong. One of the things that I'm worried about is that they're taking the lack of content they have, and they're using systems like the mastery system to space that out so it feels like there's more content. So, hey, here's one map, and it's a big map, right? But here's a map, and you can only access part of it until you go through this mastery system and update your character. And hey, then when you're finished, you get access to more content. But so on day one, you're not going to be able to get everywhere. And so there's this feeling of, I have to keep playing to get access. And I think the positive side of that is what Finalis said, that you feel like your character's growing. But I think the negative is that you want to see all this stuff and you can't keep going. It sort of spaces you out, and you have to keep grinding through levels until you get your masteries unlocked, and then you can access the content. Nobody's got anything.
I agree. Well, I mean, I'm disagreeing, but
We will have to see. There's a lot of systems talk right now. You are right. Now, they're good systems. They're improvements on what we have, but there needs to be more than just systems. Systems don't make an expansion.
Yeah, and we still have no word about any sort of instanced content. Based on the way they're talking, I feel like 3 to 5 maps is probably what we're going to get. And we've had this talk a little bit. Maybe we'll get a quick impression from you guys. I don't think that we will be killing or stopping or slowing or putting to sleep an Elder Dragon in Heart of Thorns, at least in the base release. I think they're either going to do that, probably not in a later expansion, but I think they're maybe going to save that for living world content after the game comes out.
I think that's fair. Even if you go with the Blizzard model, they had a good 2 or 3 raids planned out past the initial ones for their expansion, so that was at least a year worth of content. So, yeah, we wouldn't necessarily kill Mordremoth for 12 months, maybe 18.
Do you think the player base will respond well to that?
It depends on what the content between launch and 18 months, or let's just say until Mordremoth is in the game as an encounter. If the content is good and the systems they're building hold up, then the player base could be very happy. If not, well, we'll see.
I guess there's another worry that I have that I've gotten a little better about articulating this because I have an example. They've changed the Zaitan fight so that you no longer have to do a story dungeon to complete it. You can do it as a solo personal story instance. And a lot of people are very happy about this.
Changed it yet?
It hasn't changed yet, but they're going to be changing it. I have this worry that they won't make Mordremoth and like a raid or some sort of instanced content fight because they're moving away from that idea, and instead Mordremoth will be like a world boss.
Oh, I don't think that. I think it will still be an instance content, but potentially similarly to the Ara story, there will be both a soloable version and scalable up to 5 people to make it a full, normal dungeon instance.
Well, do you think, so this might be a slight difference, do you think it'll be a dungeon instance? Because dungeon instances don't scale based on the size of the group. Or will it be like a personal story instance that does scale based on the size of the group?
Well, they haven't actually said if the new Ara thing will be scalable or just you can do it solo or not.
I'm like 95% sure that they did say that
it will be scalable?
Yeah. I'll see if I can find it on the wiki, but I'm pretty sure that they did say that it's going to be scalable down to a single person.
It'll be scalable, unfortunately, not a dungeon. But I honestly think that the way they've done it in the past, that story should be, in a story-type instance, and it should all be scalable. But in addition to it, there should be other instance content that goes with it, like how they've done with the other dungeons. I like the fact that there is a story version of it, and then you can go back and say, oh, look, there are other things still happening in this instance. Let's go deal with it. Even if the story part of the story dungeons aren't the same as the scalable stuff from the personal story, I think that's... I still like that that's the way they did that.
Yeah,
and I hope they continue that trend. I don't really feel like they will because of how little they've talked about instance content, and I feel like they're just going to do personal story, living story type content, which is disappointing, but I'm not, counting it as a not possibility, but I don't have my hopes up.
So here's Bobby Stein on the forums. The Story Step Victory or Death and the Ruined City of Ara Story Dungeon are being merged and revised to support 1 to 5 players. The previous version of Ruined City of Ara Story Dungeon will be retired, and the explorable version will be unlocked by default. And then in the FAQ, with this release, we're changing a few things about the final personal story step, victory or death. For starters, the instance has been modified to support 1 through 5 players. You will no longer need a full party to complete it. We've converted the story mode of Ruin City Varroa Dungeon to be a personal story step. So after this update goes live, you may only play it once as part of your personal story. Blah, blah, blah. Please note that the core gameplay and structure of the story instance has not been changed. The difficulty has been adjusted to allow for solo play and will therefore be more accessible for players. That last bit, please note core gameplay has not been changed, difficulty more accessible, is in bold and underlined. Bobby Stein really wanted to kind of pop that out. So I guess my kind of brain concern is, right, we know that they stopped working on dungeons. They've mostly seemed to stop working on fractals. Has ArenaNet decided that the player base does not want instance, like, friends required challenging content, and so we're just not going to get the kind of raids and dungeons that I think a lot of us assume are still coming? And it is the change to the Zaitan fight, or not really the fight, but the change to that dungeon, kind of the canary in the coal mine about that?
I hope not. I'm not thinking there because I don't want anything anywhere near that to be true. So I'm doing my damnedest to not think about this outcome. So I'm going to say just I hope not and leave it there.
Yeah, I think I'll agree with that. Yes, you need to have plenty of open world content. Yes, everyone who makes it through all the story steps deserves to at least complete the story. I mean, that's what's fair, right? Blizzard actually, again, talking about another major MMO player in the market, they always had trouble because their story stuff was, to a large degree, hidden behind raids. So you would initially grab your 39 best friends and go try and run the content, and then you'd grab fewer and fewer, but you still had to grab a non-insignificant number of people to see the story. So I would not be surprised if they made the story pieces, or at least the base elements of the story, quite accessible numbers-wise, soloable, scalable, pick your descriptor. But I would hope that they also continue to do instanced content outside of that. Because I think there is a large amount of the player base that is at least interested and wants to do more. I can't tell you how many or how much, but it would be too bad if they stopped working on instances, because for the most part, they've gotten pretty good at it.
Any thoughts, Finalis?
Yeah, I just feel like, they're definitely currently just working on, the open world for now. I'm hoping maybe once they release the game, that they'll be more focused on, the different groups of players for instant content. Because, I don't know, I still prefer instant content because at least then you have the group of people that, you play with and can progress with those challenging contents. But it's still too early to tell, and I don't know, ArenaNet can definitely do many things, with their game, and we just have to wait.
So I've got one thing that I think may be the solution to this, and I don't think anybody from ArenaNet listens to this, but if somebody knows them, just tap them on the head. I think the real solution to this is letting things like the Mordremoth fight be a story content bit that is, soloable by one not particularly skilled player, but have a hard mode. So you play the same content, but balanced difficultly for a group of people that's coming in through an instance, and higher rewards, harder content. I feel like that might be the best possible solution, because I don't know, at this point, I have a hard time seeing them build instanced raids if it's only going to appeal to a very small percentage of the player base that's able to complete it.
I'd agree with you there.
I would agree with you, but unfortunately, and they have said in the past they don't want to make a hard mode because they don't want to split their community. They don't want to do that.
True.
But they have to realize that there are people here who enjoy that and who want that. And that's the reason why they're here.
I mean, the community is already split, right?
Yes.
I'm not sitting around replaying my personal story on extra characters because I love it. I am replaying dungeons over and over and over again because I love them.
Yeah, I feel like ANN has implemented that, like the hard mode to a certain degree with challenge modes, in their season 2. Maybe expand on that for like the more challenging content that is rewarding and not just, you're doing it for the sake of the story or for an achievement.
So I like the challenge modes, but I feel like they might be buried between too much like non-relevant, non-skippable dialogue. Like there's a lot of stuff you have to do to get to those challenge modes, and it's such a small portion of those overall instances. I feel like something that's meant to be an hour-long raid encounter or longer, however long they want these things to be, that's tuned with fun, appropriate difficulty fights throughout. I guess that's asking a lot nowadays, but that's really what I'm looking for, not like, hey, spend 20 minutes getting to this spot, now repeat it 30 times trying to dodge this one random attack that, happens and has a very small tell, and good luck.
Yeah, I think when you're talking challenge modes, you want to do things that are under player control, like this boss has a move that stacks 25 might on it instantaneously. To complete the challenge achievement for the boss, don't cleanse the might. Just don't do it. Or don't blind him, or whatever. Or this is a boss that's designed to be kited. Don't slow them down. Don't CC them. That's a challenge. Not run through the minefield and trigger all the mines, and then run through the minefield again on a second run and trigger none of them. Oh, and you have to do it once in normal mode before you can get either of those.
Yeah, I think the achievements in general left a bit to be desired and felt like busy work. But even if we just focus in on the challenge mode portions, now, admittedly, I haven't done a whole lot of those because I've looked at them and gone, yeah, I don't really feel like that. I don't know if I'd feel a sense of accomplishment for the time that I spent doing it. Honestly, I had done the one in cleansing the foe fire, where you have to not get hit by the little things that knock you back. And after like 3 times in a row of the thing spawning on top of me, like in a spot where I couldn't see it with my camera, because this was, I think, before the camera changes happened.
Yes.
It was really hard to see. And I was just like,
that.
this is dumb. Like I'm standing, I got knocked back by something. I guess it's time to restart and click through all the dialogue. A challenge mode there might have made that a little bit less painful, but it wasn't a fun experience of doing it. And I didn't feel like I achieved or accomplished anything other than I've accomplished not having to ever do this again.
Which is not what you want. You still want the best challenge mode keeps you coming back for more without having to be a horde mode type deal.
And I think maybe the difference is, and maybe this is where they're trying to go with adventures, doing things where you try to improve and do better, I feel like gives me more to work forward to and more leeway than something that's like, you just have to finish this once. If it were instead like, hey, can you burn down this boss in under a minute? Okay, now can you do it under 55 seconds? Okay. And you started to get like more achievement points and more rewards for the faster that you did it. Like that would be something that I might try and do again and again. Like maybe if speed running were a thing in the game and you got rewards commensurate with how fast you did the content, then that would keep me coming back and trying to get better and do better. But I feel like a lot of the things are just set up where you do it once and then you're done and you never think about it again.
Yeah, or to that same point, undermanning.
Undermanning too, yeah.
Do this boss with 4 people instead of 5. Try and do it with 3. Try and do it with 2. Okay, try and beat it just by yourself.
Now I get the feeling that adventures are sort of their answer to that. Now, we've only seen one adventure so far, and I guess it either wasn't in this beta or maybe it was like time
There are
limited.
2 of them.
I believe there were 3 that were flagged, but none of them were actually open. One of them I walked up to and it was like, wait until the camp is available. I went over to it when the camp was available, and it said, wait till the camp is available. And I went, wait, what? Another one was it didn't even say what it was, but it said, do you want to go through and help us? And I went, yes. I walked through the little door, or I teleported or whatever, and there was a whole bunch of mobs and stuff on the ground. So I was like, okay, I guess I have to pick up one of these things and walk back and put it somewhere. And I picked up one, and I walked back through it, and it was like, great, thanks, you want to do it again? And I'm like, okay. And I did it 3 more times, and it just did that over and over again, and I'm like, I don't think I'm doing anything. So, no, I don't believe they were there. They were teasing us again, showing us that, we've got these. Oh, and the one from the previous beta was just completely missing. The flag wasn't there, there was nothing over there were no mobs, no nothing. So
That's
I don't
really
know if they
interesting.
scrapped it, or if it's going to be a time-based thing, or they didn't want it to be available because they didn't like how it was played, or what. But they weren't there.
I think we're probably seeing some beta bugs as well. Like we have said a couple of times, just in this chat, this is a beta, and it was kind of obvious that when your quest reward is a big question mark that is a green quality, and its flavor text is question mark, question mark, question mark, or I think there might have been 5 of them, but you get my point. There are some things that just aren't quite working right or aren't complete yet. And this is probably one of those not quite working rights.
Yeah, adventures do seem like one of the things they'd layer in last, but it is still a little concerning that there's not much to see yet, especially since it's supposed to be such a big feature with leaderboards and everything else. If they're at a spot where, they don't have working adventures with leaderboards, that makes me start to go like, oh gosh, that's a major feature. We saw problems with leaderboards before. Cough,
I was going to say,
cough.
Do we have leaderboards yet?
Yeah.
Maybe we should worry about functional leaderboards before worrying about functional adventures with leaderboards.
Yeah,
Cough,
so
cough.
it's a big question mark and not just the type you receive for completing content. So we're running a little long. I think we're getting close to an hour here. I'm curious if you guys have any topics that we haven't talked about yet that you think are worth talking about. I haven't really touched on like the enemies or the Itzel, which we saw here for the first time. Is there anything else that you guys think is worth mentioning to people?
A lot and not much at the same time.
I think that's a good way to put it.
And it's hard to pick out what. Because you talk about the wrong thing and people are just going to be like, oh, well, that doesn't sound all that great. And, there's a lot of area to kind of tread carefully in because there was a lot that was unfinished. And there were a lot of things that are maybe starting to show some promise. Like, the Revenant, as is, isn't all that exciting. I mean, you don't do a lot of damage because you're wearing celestial gear. I didn't even see whether you had rings or trinkets.
More celestial.
So. Yeah, but you know what I mean. It's all celly gear. You have a very limited weapon set. It's interesting, but it doesn't even really synergize with itself. The fact that you can change your utilities rather than your weapons when you're in combat with your legend swap, that's kind of cool, but the legends that you have are the tanky one and the condy one, at least by everyone's guesses. So it's kind of like, this could be really cool, but I'm going to withhold judgment until I can see how they work together better.
Yeah, I think we need to see some power legends. I'm assuming that the other ones will be a single target damage legend, maybe like an AoE damage legend, but that also seems kind of more related to weapon skills, which aren't part of the legends. It's utility skills. So maybe one's going to be kind of a personal, selfish damage thing. Maybe that's Shiro. And then probably one will be some sort of supporty group buffy legend. I don't know what that'll be. I forget what the other one that was data mined was. Wasn't it Glint?
Glint and Ventari were the other
Glint
two.
and Ventari? I could see Ventari being party
Ventari
support.
being party support.
Yep.
Yep, and there's thoughts that Glint might be the specialization track.
And that one is going to be crowd control related.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, I mean, lots of potential. That could be really cool.
And actually, you didn't see it because it was in the story part. Ritlock shows up, and he does a crazy, what looks like glint attack.
Yeah.
And it seems to do a crowd control skill on the big boss you're fighting, because it's a dude riding a monster, and you can't do a lot of damage to it. You know, barely whittle it down. He comes over and, like, knocks the dude off of his mount, and then just kind of either stands there or runs away or something, and then you finish the fight. He says another 3 words, and then you're done. But it was, I just was pointing out that he comes in and knocks the dude off of his mount.
Hooray, Ritlock.
Mounts confirmed.
Yes, mounts confirmed.
And Finalis, I think you started saying something when I was asking if there was anything I'd forgotten. Did you have anything?
I mean, just anything else that I would have wanted to say or not. I feel like I don't know enough from it, but you know, like overall, the map is really nice. Maybe the events may not be the most exciting things to be looking forward to, but I mean, at the end of the day, I'm still excited for what ANET has to offer. And I'm hoping that it is definitely more than, what we're getting so far in the beta.
I think, unfortunately, fortunately, however you want to take it, that this map is going to feel a lot like Dry Top or Silver Wastes. So if you like that content, it's going to be there. But I don't know if that's necessarily a good thing. Or if it is a good thing. I mean, I've enjoyed the maps. I enjoy the maps when they are populated. Stepping into a Dry Top map right now is not very much fun, because usually there's not a lot of people there, and they're not very organized, and you don't get very far.
Yeah, so Dry Top...
But at least in Silver Wastes, even if it's not very populated, it still moves towards the breach, and when you get closer to the breach, you put on LFG and say, breach is coming, and the map fills instantly, because people want to do that content at least.
Yeah, Silver Wastes does get populated.
People for that end bit.
So here's my follow-up question that I want to get in here. Dry Top emptied out once Silver Wastes showed up. Is that because Silver Wastes is more fun, or is that because Silver Wastes is more loot crazed, more rewarding?
Silver Wastes is more reliable. How about that one?
I think originally it was because it was the new thing, and now I think it's because, like I said, you don't need to do any organization, and it'll just do itself. You just show up and kind of kill things. There's not a whole lot to worry about. In Dry Top, if you wanted to push it, and right now, if you want to push it to Tier 6 for the maximum rewards, you have to be organized. You have to have people be like, okay, we go over here, we go over here, we go over here, we go over here. I mean, you don't have to organize, and everyone knows what they're doing, but that's not that happen. So, but you don't have to do that in Silver Wastes, and you will still get to the top tier rewards if you just have people there.
Well, but it's not rewards, it's rewards per second, right?
Yeah. I think Silver Wastes is more consistent, and I think they've learned their lesson as far as that goes. They're not going to make something that's very inconsistent that maybe is behind layers of unlocks. Now, I'm sure there will be ways to get layers of unlocks, but this is something that I don't have the answer to the puzzle. I don't know how they're going to do it, because the unlocks are fun. It's a sense of achievement, But how do you also make it so that 5 people can do the same amount of work as 50 if it comes down to it? I don't know.
So I think I have a thesis for why Silver Waste is more popular than Dry Top. And I think it's because by not being locked to a real world clock for the phases, it makes LFG map hopping possible, which you sort of could do with Dry Top, but realistically, if there's a map that's going to be tier 6 Dry Top, it's full before people really have the opportunity to know, right? Because it's full and that's what pushes it to tier 6, full and organized. So there's not necessarily a lot of hopping that can be done. Silver Waste, there's always people who push it around a little bit, and then other people hop in through LFG, and then when it's done, they hop to a new one, and when it's done, they hop to a new one. So I get the feeling that the ability to hop between map instances is a huge part of Silver Waste's appeal, because you don't spend a lot of time in the not very rewarding, really grindy, build everything up phase. You spend a lot more time in the, like, hey, we're at 50% or more, we already have 4 of 4, Breach, Vine Wrath, kind of what you would call the fun phase and the rewarding phase. So I think that makes a huge difference.
But the flip side is that someone's got to build it up to that point. And I don't know if it's totally fair to let people just bypass that.
Oh, I think it's terrible, but I'm sort of making an argument as to why people play that more.
Sure.
But I agree, like the way that people handle doing Silver Waste, I think, is really bad for the game long term.
Yeah, and I think that's why they added the buff that it's like once you complete a Vine Wrath, you get, 50% Magic Find, 100%?
Yeah, it works a little differently from that, but it's...
no one makes use of it.
Well, I don't feel like it's large enough. I think that's the main problem.
Potentially.
Yeah, I think potentially they might either have to nerf Silver Waste or make the new zones more enticing than Silver Waste, because if not, I think people will still funnel back for Silver Waste for easy farm, mindless farming.
I mean, look at how long people did Queensdale Champ Train.
Oh, I haven't done Queensdale Champ Train in a while, so...
Because it's dead.
Has it died?
They killed it. Yeah.
Yeah, no more champs.
Yeah, they're not champs, so they don't drop champ bags or something, but...
Yeah.
That's why EOTM became the thing. They just funneled, and before it was Queensdale Champ Train, it was, Cursed Shore farming.
Yep. It was ore. And then before that, it was COF1.
Actually, it was COF1, then it was ore, then it was Frost Gorge / Queensdale. They killed Queensdale. Frost Gorge was still kind of going. Anyway, I think what happens is a large part of the player base is just going to do whatever the most rewarding farm is, and that's it. And that's really disappointing to me, but I think that's how it goes, yeah.
Well, and that feeds the fires with then make the hardest content the most rewarding farm. You'll get complaints, but then at least people will want to do it.
And I think that's what raids should be, but may never be.
Yep. It's always a balance. You have to strike that balance, and it's hard to do so.
Well, guys, thank you very much for chatting with me. I appreciate all the thoughts. Folks watching the video, feel free to leave your thoughts in the comments below. If this is the sort of thing you'd like to see more of, give us a like, let us know, and we'll do these chats a little bit more often. I have sort of a leaving thought, and maybe this is a separate topic we come back to later, but I don't know if you guys saw the video of Fortune's Veil that Wooden Potatoes did, where he went around the map, that map that was kind of created and data mined by that shaman but never got released. My parting thought for you is that I am more hyped about Fortune's Veil than I am about Heart of Thorns. And I think that might be the next video that we talk about. So maybe I'll give you guys homework. Go and check out those videos and check out the maps and check out the audio, because I feel like that would have been fantastic content, and I'm really sad we're not getting it. So anyway, thank you again, guys, and have a nice night. I guess you guys still have beta access, so maybe jump in and play the beta again.
Well, that's one of so that goes to an earlier question. Were we going to play any more tonight? And I actually have half the map I didn't see. I want to kind of take a look.
Well, that's not for the recording, so I'm going to go ahead and stop it, but thanks everybody for watching.